Welcome, and thank you for joining today's Governance Review Committee General Session. Please note that all audience audio connections will be muted until the Q&A portion of the call. We will give you instructions on how to speak at that time. With that, I will turn the call over to Burton Gross, Deputy General Counsel for the California ISO. Please go ahead.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. As mentioned, I'm Burton Gross from the California ISO. I am going to handle a few procedural matters just to open the meeting, and then I will turn it over to Rebecca Wagner to handle the substance of the meeting. The first thing we need to do is the roll call. And what I'll do is I'll do the roll call in alphabetical order, first with the voting members of the GRC. I'll call each of you to make sure you're present, and then I'll call the non-voting members after in alphabetical order. So starting with that, Michelle Beck.
Present.
Thank you. Tony Braun.
Present.
Suzanne Cooper.
Present.
Eric Eisenman.
Present.
Jeff Nelson.
Here.
Amanda Ormond.
Present.
Pam Sporborg.
Present.
Lisa Tawney.
Present.
Rebecca Wagner. Oh, I'm sorry, I need to mention before I go to Rebecca, Rob Taylor, who I would normally call, is unable to join us today, so I'm not calling his name. So Rebecca.
Here.
Cameron Yurkowski.
I'm here.
And then for the non-voting members, Angelina Gliteva
Present.
and John Prescott.
Here.
Thank you, everybody. So we have a quorum, and we can now proceed with the substance of the meeting. As is typical for ISO matters, the first topic is an opportunity for public comment on any issues that are not on the agenda for today. So there will be opportunity for public comment on the substance of the proposal, but we offer usually a moment just to see if there's any comment from the public on something that is not on the agenda. So if the operator could just check to make sure that there is or isn't any such comment, and then we can move on.
There are no hands raised at this time.
Okay, thank you. The next step is to approve the general session minutes from November 7th, 2022, which were circulated to the committee in advance. If I could get a motion from one of the voting members to approve the minutes, that would be great.
I will move. This is Tony.
Thank you, Tony. And is there a second?
I'll second. This is Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff. And now we'll just go through the voting members for approval of the minutes. Michelle Beck.
Aye.
Tony Braun.
Aye.
Suzanne Cooper.
Approve.
Eric Eisenman.
Aye.
Jeff Nelson.
Aye.
Amanda Ormond.
Aye.
Pam Sporborg.
Aye.
Lisa Tawney.
Aye.
Rebecca Wagner.
Aye.
And Cameron Yurkowski.
Aye.
Thank you very much. The minutes have been approved, and just let me take one check here. I think, yes, now we are ready to, I'm ready to hand it over to you, Rebecca, to begin the substantive part of the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Bert. And good morning, everyone. Good morning to the GRC and to the dedicated folks who follow all the exciting things that we do. We appreciate our stakeholders' engagement and being on what hopes to be our last GRC meeting, at least hopefully for a long while. Can we go to the next slide, please? I want to stop here and before we start our discussion on the governance proposal, I want to acknowledge the GRC members, past and present. This is the current list of our members. And as you all recall, we convened in late 2019. And over the course of the last 3 years, we've said goodbye to colleagues who have moved on to new positions or retired, 2 of whom have moved on to the EIM governing body. And we've welcomed new members who willingly jumped into the frying pan of governance. This list of members demonstrates the diversity of geography and interests. The GRC collectively represents investor-owned utilities, public power, a power marketing administration, regulators, renewable developers, consumer advocates, and public interest organizations all throughout the West. This is California and states beyond California and the region. So I see this as the perfect culmination of a broad, robust stakeholder group. And I can tell you every single person on this list, past and present, was committed to the effort and dedicated the time, in addition to their day jobs, to ensure that we develop the best possible work product. And while we were all worked really hard, no one worked harder than our chair, Therese Hampton. And because of her commitment to excellence and collaboration, we are here today to finalize our proposal. Can we skip to slide 4, please? Within our proposal, we have a dedication page to Therese. And I want to just take this opportunity to make that formal dedication of this work and a piece of our hearts to the memory of our beloved colleague, Therese Hampton, who passed away in September due to as a result of a bicycle accident. Our proposal contains a dedication to Therese with thoughts that were drafted by the GRC and a poem to reflect her passing. I've opted not to read it so that I can maintain my composure throughout the rest of this meeting. But I encourage everyone to take a look at that and know in our hearts and minds that Therese, this final proposal is for you, and thank you for all that you've done. Let me go back one slide. So here we are, today's January 9th. We'll make a decision on our proposal, and assuming a favorable outcome, we'll present this proposal on February 1st to the joint board and body. Just a few comments just to lay the foundation before we delve in. This is the third in a series of straw proposals we've prepared to develop governance enhancements for EDAM, and potentially, hopefully, represents the culmination of our work. The EDAM will not replace the EIM, but instead will be available as on an optional basis to participants who wish to extend their participation to the day-ahead market co-optimized across the entire market footprint. The functions of EDAM and EIM will exclude various central elements found in a full RTO, such as common resource adequacy policy, transmission planning, and financial congestion instruments, to name a few. Like our prior proposals, this proposal is not intended to be the model for RTO governance. It's universally recognized that in order for the West to have a multi-state RTO, an independent board free from the influence of any one state will be required. The elements of a full RTO, which include for a few common transmission planning, cost allocation, a common set of resource adequacy rules, demand that. The role of the states would also have to be addressed, as occurred in other RTOs, due to the impacts of RTO policy on state jurisdictional responsibility. It is therefore important to recognize that if regional market collaboration is to advance beyond EDAM, the governance conversation must continue, and the proposal of the GRC set forth herein is not the end game. Governance is, however, a key foundational issue for all stakeholders, including those who want to join EIM and are weighing their decision if they want to go forward, sharing a greater share of their transactions in the ISO market. As we've previously noted, the GRC has strived to develop a set of changes that achieve the right balance of EDAM. These proposed rules will give EDAM participants sufficient assurance that the market will be governed with an objective of benefiting the market as a whole. That is a key component of our principles that we developed, and they're appropriately reflecting the level of commitment. At the same time, governance rules must also accommodate the needs of full market participants who must rely on both the day-ahead and real-time market and the full services of the ISO associated within its balancing authority. So those entities that are the investor-owned utilities of California are reliant on the ISO and must share that. And so we've been striving to strike that balance. It's not possible to establish a set of rules that fully satisfies all stakeholders or that can foresee and address all future issues that may arise. It has been our overarching goal instead to create a foundation that fosters sufficient trust and collaboration among all parties to enable EDAM and its governance to succeed and evolve over time in much the same way has occurred with EIM. I can't stress this enough, is that all of us who sit here today as the GRC and the stakeholders acknowledge that not everybody got what they wanted, but what we have pulled together in totality, I think, is a very sound foundation moving forward for EDAM governance. And like the EIM, we'll have the opportunity to evolve over time. The passage of time will be the best instruction of how best to continue to evolve and perfect the market. This draft proposal comes after 4 rounds of written stakeholder comments and robust stakeholder comments, I must say, 5 general session stakeholder meetings, and nearly a year of informal stakeholder outreach and discussion. We've covered all of the issues that we've been asked to address. And again, I just want to take this chance to thank the GRC. I think I counted that we've had 32 meetings this year. We started off 2020, or not this year, last year. We started off 2022 with meeting weekly until we got to our straw proposal. And I really thank you for all of the commitment and staying with it and coming to this conclusion with this final proposal. With that, I'll shut up and I will turn this over to Commissioner Letha Tawney, who's going to walk through, we can go to the next slide, an overview of the delegation of authority, which clearly has been a key component and area of great discussion and robust stakeholder commentary. So with that, I will turn this over to Letha. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Rebecca. And I think I speak for all of my GRC colleagues in thanking you. Usually when you take on a vice chair role, it doesn't include having to step up to be the chair under such terrible circumstances. And I want to really appreciate how much effort you've put in to bringing the process to a constructive close and bringing us to today's meeting. So thank you. I know that that was not a light burden to carry this fall. And may none of us ever have to take on a vice chairmanship that has to evolve in such a way. So I want to walk us through the fundamentally sort of the decision-making processes that we're proposing in the proposal we have. Can we go to the next slide? And I want to root us, first of all, in the fact that FERC requires that every ISO and RTO ensures the interests of all stakeholders are equitably considered in decision making. And just reflect that this makes sense. In the construct of a regulated or a highly managed market, you're regulating such a marketplace because there's an inherent risk of monopoly power and capture. And you're seeking to mitigate that risk. In the end, I think, for the public good. And to do that well, all stakeholders have to be considered in the decision making. And I draw a parallel when I approach this concept and what our task was. I draw a parallel to my own agency, the Oregon Public Utility Commission's mission to use inclusive process to evaluate the differing viewpoints and visions of public interest and arrive at balanced, well-reasoned, independent decisions that are supported by fact and law. This is how we get to public good in this sector. I think additionally, beyond all the economic theory, FERC understood you could not expect differently situated stakeholders to be willing to engage in a marketplace to begin with, to join in at all, without assurance that decision-making in that marketplace was going to equitably consider their interests. Not always decide for them, not always go their way, but thoughtfully incorporate their interests in balance with all of the others. Building on this, I'd note the concept of equitable consideration of stakeholder interests is elaborated already in the Western EIM governing body's existing charter. And I point there to their mission. The EIM governing body shall promote, protect, and expand the success of the EIM for the benefit of its participants as a whole. And as you can see in our Appendix A, the CAISO's charge from the California legislature is to manage the grid in a way that balances a range of public interests. As the Western EIM has demonstrated already with billions in benefits, those public interests are best met by a large market footprint that delivers benefits widely, including to the CAISO BA. And so even if, contrary to the FERC requirements that I started with, that board were to somehow choose to consider only those customers served by the CAISO BA, they would still have to find a balanced marketplace that draws the trust of other Western BAs, delivers significant benefits, and is essential to meeting their legislated mandate. We have a strong, very strong alignment of interests around the benefits that can be delivered through this balanced marketplace. And, you know, an editorial comment just from my perspective, the reality is that any VA that chooses to go it alone or procure resources or operate as though they were an island, any of us, anywhere in the West, is really operating under a fantasy that's going to be quite expensive for their customers in the end. We are all in this together. We've always been in this together, and we're only going to continue to be in this together more tightly. And any counterfactual that suggests otherwise, I think, is indulging in pretending that self-determination can be purchased. And I think ERCOT showed us just how expensive that purchase price could be. And so from my perspective, and what I've really appreciated in engaging with the GRC and what I think we bring forward in this proposal is that we recognize our interdependence and are maximizing the benefits to our customers. The breadth of the GRC members, as Rebecca pointed out, really brings that forward. And it's been a delight to figure out how to craft the best solution together with all of my colleagues. And I think we're putting forward inclusive governance that matches the products that's being designed. As Rebecca rooted us originally, our first overarching principle that we started with reaffirming at the beginning of 2020 is ensuring that the governance of the Western EIM and EDAM provides stakeholders throughout the West with confidence that the governance structure represents the markets as a whole, broadly respects and considers the interests of all stakeholders and is resilient under a wide range of market conditions. So I think when we talk about the type of authority, the decisional classification and dispute resolution processes, and the scope of authority, we're really coming back to that central principle. And I think we're putting forward a proposal that meets that principle. The marketplace that's being proposed by the EDAM initiative is constrained. It's only the day ahead, real-time, security-constrained, economic dispatch of resources. There's a wide range of other decisions that each BA is retaining for themselves, including the CAISO BA. So we put forward our organizing principles to judge our different approaches, and that's what we've sought to put forward here. So let's turn to the proposal. Why joint authority? So joint authority has been what we've operated under in 2022. It seems and is illustrated to build trust across the region. As decisions are being made by both bodies, they're being exposed, those decision makers are being exposed to the full range of stakeholder views and building a deeper understanding of the issues and how the issues are interconnected. That process of collaboration between the decision makers, I think so far in 2022, is demonstrating a really healthy and constructive deepening of collaboration that's good for the balance of the whole market. It takes a ton of time. Their meetings are very long, and it's very exhausting for them, I suspect. But I see, and I think the GRC and our dialogue and the stakeholder comments that we received back through our process is really reflected hope in that deeper collaboration. And we see the CAISO Board of Governors extending, as is their prerogative, on an ad hoc basis in the meantime, as we're between Western EIM and an EDAM, extending that joint authority because they value that collaborative decision-making with a Western EIM governing body. And I think that points to that need, one of our other principles, to support and advance potential future governance structures appropriate for multi-state RTO. Joint authorities allowing them to do that, build that collaboration in a constructive way. And we saw a lot of support, not 100%, but a lot of support among stakeholders for joint authority. So we're maintaining that, taking it forward. We're similarly making no changes in the decisional classification or the dispute resolution because these existing processes, as they were hammered out in the last round of governance changes that were proposed and adopted in late 2021, implemented in 2022, bring forward healthy and constructive process, right? They provide, we hope, transparency, an opportunity for stakeholders to air their perspectives and have those perspectives be weighed by decision makers. They bring forward an opportunity for constructive conflict to really hammer out why is it that we have, in some cases, differing interests. And those two processes we have a lot of confidence in as they've been constructed so far, and think they'll carry us forward into EDAM in an effective way that will, again, let us continue to build trust. And if they are not working, there are lots of safety valves and lots of opportunities for further dialogue in those processes to move us towards solutions. And so we're proposing no changes in those two pieces. And finally, where we are proposing a change is in the scope. And this is where a great deal of discussion has gone on in the comments and in the GRC itself. As stakeholder members, we've really reflected exactly the concerns and perspectives that many of you will have read in the stakeholder comments. So can we go to the next slide? Let's delve into the current definition. Let's go forward, actually one more slide, to the proposed revisions. So what we're doing here is what we're proposing is that we take what was described for Western EIM Joint Authority, and we port it forward into the day-ahead market. We've added one additional piece where we include joint authority for any proposal to change or establish any tariff rule for the day-ahead or real-time markets that directly establishes or changes the formation of an LMP for a product that's common. And what we landed on here after a lot of process, stakeholder workshop in the fall that was incredibly helpful, is that any perception that one might be able to write a rule for that would directly change or limit or form an LMP for one BA, in reality, is going to have an impact across the whole market footprint if the product is shared. And so for an EDAM price, there is no such thing as being able to do that in a single VA. And so this is a joint authority question. And there was, in the last proposal, a pretty extensive discussion of what this means and what this doesn't mean. And so you see that note there that tries to articulate that. The CAISO VA uses pricing for a wide variety of things, including the security constrained economic dispatch at the day ahead level. And we're trying to be very specific about what's under joint authority here. I think I also take enormous comfort in, and in our GRC discussions, there has been extensive dialogue about how the decisional classification process can help us through any places where there's dispute about how to apply this scope. And there can be extensive discussion among stakeholders. And at the end of the day, the governing boards, the Board of Governors and the Western EIM Board can dialogue together about what the right approach is for decision making. And if it's joint, both boards need to, as I talked about at the beginning, think through the issues and interests across the whole market footprint, both because it's in the interests of perhaps the BA that they are responsible for, but also because that's their charge from FERC in their own charters, and because that's what's necessary to keep a market that brings benefits forward. We're in this together, and we need to go forward as though we are in it together. And I think the GRC is putting forward a joint authority proposal that really plays to those strengths and gives us space to work out when we're finding that we're struggling with incentives or interests that are running against each other. So I really appreciate the really robust and detailed dialogue that we've had as colleagues in the GRC. I think we've landed on a really constructive solution that really took into consideration the extensive comments we received. And I look forward to seeing how it plays out and how we all engage together around the specific decisions. So with that, I want to hand it to Suzanne Cooper to cover the next section. You can go forward on one slide. Oh, I forgot. Suzanne, I forgot advisory authority. I'm sorry. Let me cover advisory authority really quick. So advisory authority is essentially everything else. And so because the Western EIM governing body brings forward important perspectives and has deep networks that are attuned to how decisions play out across the West, their advice is welcomed by the Board of Governors on everything else. We added some pieces when there is advice that the Board of Governors needs to proceed with caution, that there is a problem that advisory authority must be put forward in that joint session and can be submitted to FERC. So if there is conflict, there is more process in order to unpack the roots of that conflict and understand why there's a difference of perspectives about how to balance interests. And so that's advisory authority. And I think that is the last thing I have to say about authority. I apologize, Suzanne. And operator, I think we want to be slide 10 or 11, Suzanne's preference. So thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you, Lisa. No problem. So the next section that I'm going to talk about the next two sections. Do I need to?
Okay, can I be? Uh-oh. Operator, do you want to mute me on the
Zoom? Thank you. I know I was hearing myself twice, so if you guys were hearing me twice, I'm sure that was as annoying to you as it was to me. Okay, so we're going to talk about, I'm going to talk a little bit about the recommendations that we're moving forward with regard to the size and composition of the governing body. So if we can go to the next slide, please. All right, great. So here there are a few recommendations. So in the GRC's revised draft final proposal, we are not proposing to change the size of the governing body or the compensation of governing body members. Folks may recall that with the straw proposal, we had put forth the question as to whether or not the size of the governing body should be expanded to potentially 7 members from the current 5 in order to, and we asked the question whether that would be needed to have a broader reflection of the diversity of the market participants and the footprint across which entities reside in the footprint. And ultimately, with regard to the governing body's size, we are continuing to recommend that it remains at 5, which there was support from stakeholders for that. But we will also recommend that this is something that can be assessed in the future once there is time and experience gained under the operations of the EDAM market, as well as an understanding of, the initial size of the sort of the number of participants in the market initially and what the growth trajectory might look like for the continued expansion of that. And the charter for EIM governance does require that a governance reevaluation begin no later than June of 2026, which we are in 2023, although just a couple weeks in here, but 2026 is not far away, and we believe that this could be an appropriate time to consider whether the size of the governing body warrants any adjustment. As at that time, we should have some operation under this new extended day-ahead market under our belts, which will give participants and stakeholders a better sense of whether the workload for the governing body would justify an increase to size, and also that trade-off of the workload relative to, and the size, expanding the size of the governing body relative to the cost that would come along with that. With regard to compensation for governing body members, we had gotten input from stakeholders earlier in the process that it would be important that compensation for governing body members be comparable with similar bodies And there was a proposal that that there be a review of compensation, et cetera, and also some sense that, or some feedback that unless it became necessary to recruit qualified candidates, that maybe current compensation levels were appropriate. So we had put out a recommendation and are continuing to support the recommendation that a compensation study be done in this year that we're in, 2023, to evaluate the governing body's compensation relative to similar entities. And this would be then provided to the CAISO board as information for them to consider, because ultimately it's the ISO board that determines the compensation for the governing body. We did get some feedback on our revised proposal from the public interest organizations, who suggested that the study might also want to look at both kind of the part-time nature of general governing body members, and whether if one who's in the chair role or the vice chair role, if they happen to be working more, if they find that the workload is more full-time, that whether there should be any differentiation in compensation. And we think that this is kind of a level of detail that when CAISO management goes to scope the study, that it's kind of best left to them to figure out really all the elements of the study and what they would what should be captured at that point in time. So we're proposing that study again occur this year. And then the last thing, which is actually noted second here on the slide, is around the selection process for governing body members. In recognition of the increased responsibility that EDAM will bring to the governing body, the GRC recommended adding a step in the nomination process, that when a current governing body member, when their term is coming up to expire, if they seek to remain for an additional term, we specifically recommended that in those instances that the nominating committee should evaluate whether that member has the qualifications to serve, given these additional EDAM responsibilities. And the intent with that proposal was not so focused on the individual as much as to help ensure that collectively the members of the governing body have that the experience and capabilities, like the knowledge, skill sets, et cetera, that would be needed as a whole for the body to oversee the extended day-ahead market. We did receive a comment from Puget Sound Energy, some feedback on this, noting that this requirement could kind of outlive its usefulness over time once EDAM has been operational for a period of time. And we agree that this would be an outcome that we should avoid. Our intention wasn't necessarily for this to be exist in perpetuity every time there was a governing body member who sought to serve for an additional term. So we are clarifying in the document that this step would apply for really the initial transition from when governing body members that served prior to EDAM kind of complete their terms and seek reappointment. Okay. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, which this next segment is about stakeholder engagement and policy development and the recommendations that we have there. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, overall, the GRC recommends maintaining the CAISO's current stakeholder engagement model. We view it as very inclusive and accessible for all stakeholders to engage in the current stakeholder process and forums that are embedded in the CAISO's framework currently. Within the framework, we recommend expanding use of stakeholder working groups like those that were used in the EDAM initiative to develop and consider various policy options on particular topics. We have found those to be pretty successful, and stakeholders indicated a lot of support for those. We are recommending use of these working groups for initiatives that are complex in nature, maybe those that have a pretty wide range of potential solutions, and where the impact to market participants or stakeholders is significant enough to really warrant that additional work and time investment that working groups require. We did see with, and it was, again, very positive feedback from stakeholders about the working groups that were used in EDAM development, but they also acknowledged that it was a big time investment, and so we're recommending that the use of working groups be done judiciously and for those types of initiatives where there's quite a bit of either complexity or impact. We are also continuing to recommend that the Regional Issues Forum annually host a roundtable at the outset of the CAISO's stakeholder roadmap development process, where each stakeholder sector within the RIF could share its priority of the various initiatives that are the discretionary initiatives that are being contemplated. We do clarify in this draft final proposal that the panelist or speaker for each sector should be one of the sector's identified liaisons, unless there's general agreement in the sector that another participant in the sector should be that representative at the roundtable. Ultimately, each sector's panelist is really responsible for accurately presenting the views of the sector, whether that be an aligned, like unanimous view on prioritization or a range of views within the sector about what the highest priorities should be. And I know some of stakeholders just voiced question as to whether one individual would be able to do that, and we believe that that is the responsibility of whether it be a RIF liaison or someone else from the sector who's taking on that role, is to accurately represent the full sector's perspective. And speaking of sectors, here the last recommendation in the stakeholder engagement sector is section, I'm getting my words messed up, sector section, is to add a new RIF sector liaison for EDAM entities. And this is recognizing that being an EDAM participant will bring distinct interests and implications that really warrant having separate representation in the RIF. We're recommending a single liaison for the EDAM sector, with the selection process for the liaison to begin after an EDAM implementation agreement is filed with FERC. It's kind of the same trigger for currently for EIM sector participation. So we just thought carrying that over made a lot of sense. Though not a specific recommendation, we do note in the document that the further evolution of sectors or sector definitions can occur as part of this next governance review that's slated to begin sometime in or at least no later than 2026. So these definitions are, rooted in the charter, and so to change them and make adjustments to them requires changes to governance charters that can fairly, I'm not going to say fairly readily, but that can be done judiciously, I think, within an existing review of governance, as we have one coming up in a couple of years here. So with that, those are the recommendations in these two areas that remain in our current draft final proposal here. And I am going to pass it to Eric Eisenman to talk about the next recommendation area.
Thanks, Suzanne. Hello, everyone. If we can go to the next slide, please. So we have a recommended addition to the ISO's bylaws. And first, I want to give a couple context points. First, some stakeholders had earlier expressed some concern to us about an argument that the ISO is obligated to pursue the benefit of California load exclusively. And then kind of a second context point is the CAISO bylaws is an official document that the board can consult to determine its own obligations. So with that context, we are proposing to amend the CAISO bylaws to clarify that the CAISO will weigh, and I put an emphasis on that, the interests of all stakeholders in the footprint. Now, originally, a couple cycles ago, we had proposed, quote, the corporation will consider the interest of all stakeholders, unquote. And we got a lot of stakeholder feedback on this, and especially about the word consider. So we had a pretty robust debate about what word to use there, whether we should keep it with consider. We thought about the word balance. But we finally decided that the word weigh was best and the most precise. So you can see in the quote here, the language, we're proposing the language be added to the CAISO bylaw, and I'll emphasize right there at the end of the third line, the corporation will weigh the interests of all stakeholders within the footprint of the markets that it administers. So we just think that, I'm going to use different words here, but on balance, that using the word weigh makes the most sense. We appreciate all the feedback that we had, and I want all the stakeholders to know that we did discuss all these different terms, and we think that this where we've landed here makes the most sense. So that's really all I've got on this slide. Again, thanks for the feedback on this, and I'll pass it back to Rebecca. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Eric, and thank you, Letha and Suzanne. You guys all did a great job. Really appreciate the narrative around the slides, and to really get a feel for what the GRC has been working on. Let's go to the next slide. I'm going to wrap up the presentation on our proposals. First, it's the GRC's recommendation that joint authority apply to the decision on EDAM market design, which has been proposed, which is the plan. And as I mentioned earlier, we will we will be presenting to the board and body on February 1st for their consideration of our proposal. As well as at that same time, the market design proposal will be proposed. So our joint authority process is already in the works. Timing of implementation, after assuming approval, right, for market design and governance, the ISO will begin preparing its changes to its amendment for filing with FERC on the market design. And once there is a conclusive acceptance of the 205 filing, that's when the implementation of governance will begin. And it's hard to know exactly what those outcomes are at a regulatory body. It's hard to forecast, but once it's generally set that this is the course for market design, that's when our governance will kick in. With that, let's go to the next slide. Here's all of the information about everything that we have done, a clean copy of our final proposal, and I note that includes a dedication to our colleague Therese, all the stakeholder comments, which have been robust and very constructive and helpful in our deliberation, and then just the general information. So this is like the go-to slide for anything you need to find on the work of the GRC. Now I'd like to turn to, just to round this out, I'd like to hear public comment on our proposal. We have about 35 minutes left on our time. I want to leave ample time for comments and reflections and deliberation from the Governance Review Committee. So I would encourage folks to keep comments concise, and if there are questions, I'm not sure that there's any additional things that we can actually answer at this point that haven't answered before, but if there is something of the nature that is just trying to clarify, that would be helpful. So with that, and with recognition that we have 33 minutes left, I would like to turn it over to public comment. Just ask the event organizer to go ahead and open it up for comment.
As we move to public comment, please place yourself in the question queue by utilizing the raise hand feature located at the bottom of your screen. Move your cursor to make the toolbar appear if needed. If you are on a mobile device, tap your screen to display the toolbar, then press raise hand. You will be unmuted when it's your turn. A pop-up message will appear and you will need to accept the unmute message to become unmuted. At that time, please state your name and affiliation. If you are on the phone-only line, please press #2 to enter the question queue. And we do have a few questions. First caller, please go ahead.
Hey, this is Michelle Kia from the CPUC. I have 5 different comments and questions.
Okay, whoa. Okay, comments, questions, and you have 5 areas. Let's start with, I'm seeing the queue load up with folks for comments, and I want everybody to get a chance. So
okay, well, I would note that you guys,
your first pressing comment would be helpful. Thank you.
okay, well, I was told that this would be my opportunity, and so I was expecting that I could make all of my comments, and I'm disappointed that that would not be the case. But let me just start with the first.
I'm not suggesting that. I'm just suggesting we need to let everybody get a chance. So I so recognizing that, let's start with your most pressing, and then we can come back to you once other folks have been given an opportunity to do so.
Okay, well, if you guys could also consider extending your meeting, I'd appreciate it. So my first question is regarding timing and implementation. So are you saying conclusively, is that just FERC acceptance? And then my second part of that is, what if the go live isn't until like 2026, even though FERC has accepted it? Does that mean that there's joint authority in the interim? And I do have follow-up questions.
Do you have a comment on it? What's your position on it?
My comment, and then I just want to go to my second one. My comment is that I think that the go live should be when EDAM is effective. And that because oftentimes there are considerable delays in implementation. And I'd like to make a point about the written statement of opposition. So let's say maybe you guys could clarify the written statement of opposition. You could begin doing the written statements of opposition as soon as you're given joint authority. And maybe you could talk about the purpose of the written statement of opposition. And I would note that probably CAISO customers would be paying for what is a protest at FERC regarding potentially day-ahead market issues that are in joint authority. So maybe you could clarify, would EDAM, potential EDAM participants be paying for those joint motions of opposition?
So this is a much more complicated question than I can answer, and I would have to defer to ISO. So do you have a recommendation on how that would work?
Yeah, my recommendation is that there aren't any written statements of opposition until there are actually EDAM members who are then paying for it. I think it seems wrong for CAISO to be paying for their own protests if we don't have EDAM members paying for it as well. Or EIM members. And then I have three other
okay,
other points.
Okay. If we can keep them in the context of, you can state your question and then give us a recommendation on it, that's super helpful in this. And I'm tracking your questions to see if we can have a way to resolve them ultimately.
Okay,
so keep
maybe
going
you
with
guys
the way
could,
we're going.
Yeah, my next question is is there a FERC filing with regard to this? Could you talk about the process that comes with this GRC recommendation? You're going to go to the board, but is there also a FERC filing? And could you tell us the timing of the FERC filing?
So no, the governance is not within the tariff. So what's referenced as a FERC filing is going to be the market design piece. The next decisional component for EDAM will be on February 1st, and that's where the board and the body will take it up into consideration. And that's outlined in the paper.
Okay, so my fourth point is about the equitable consideration. And so I would note that Commissioner Tawney was talking about equitable consideration, but I'd also note that we're not really an RTO, and so it's still voluntary. So if someone doesn't like the rules, they can always leave EDAM or they can never join EDAM, which is very different than other RTOs. So I would note that there might be reasons that equitable consideration would not be appropriate in that voluntary scheme. I mean, if everyone wants to, and in that regard, I'd say CAISO customers are paying for, all the time and energy that we're spending on developing all of the software and this entire process, all the staff devoted to it. EDAM members are not paying for that. Unless somebody wants to correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay, and let's go to your next point.
Yes, let's see. The delegation of authority, I guess my comment is and that the only thing that it appears to encompass with the additional language is market power mitigation, and that CAISO has said that they're only going to do system-wide market power mitigation. From my perspective, I think it clouds what we're talking about, and I guess at this point we don't think it's necessary. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you for giving us your viewpoint. I'm not prepared to answer all the questions on the spot, but giving your perspective was really helpful. I appreciate that, Ms. Quito. And let's go to the next caller in queue.
Hi, my name is Frank Harris. I'm the manager of Energy Regulatory Policy for the California Municipal Utility Association. I appreciate the opportunity to make this comment. It's just a general overarching comment. The CMUA is unique in that it has water members that are customers of the IOUs and CCAs, while also having membership comprised of electric utilities within the traditional CAISO footprint, and also outside of the footprint. CMUA members, for example, LEDWP, Bank, Turlock Irrigation District, are also EIM entities and considering participation in EDAM. We appreciate the opportunity to provide comments and also the work of the Governance Review Committee to wrestle with the complex issues of governance for the EDAM. CMUA is supportive of the GRC's proposal and the application of joint authority to EDAM. CMUA concurs that the GRC has struck the right balance in shaping the current joint authority governance structure to fit the EDAM, and we support the applied to articulation of the scope of joint authority. CMUA also supports the clarifications of the GRC that include within the scope of joint authority direct pricing issues for products common across the EDAM footprint, while making clear that the BA-specific issues, including transmission reservation priorities, remain the sole province of the CAISO board. As has been stated earlier, EDAM is not an RTO. EDAM does not include design features like a common resource adequacy program or consolidated transmission planning process that may allocate transmission costs. In this way, EDAM is a bit of a halfway house, and the joint authority reflects that fundamental compromise element of market design. I'll close with stating that it's important to recognize that both the market design and the associated governance elements will continue to evolve to reflect the needs of customers and market participants. This governance structure is not likely the last word, but we look forward to continued work with CAISO and stakeholders as markets evolve in the coming years. Thank you again for the opportunity to make this comment.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. We appreciate you sticking with us through the process and through this meeting, and thank you for your comments. Can we go to the next caller, please?
Yes, hello. This is Vijay Satyal of Western Resource Advocates. Can you hear me? Hello, Rebecca.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. First of all, a very big congratulations to the Governance Review Committee for all your work. Vijay Satyal, I frustrate the regional markets work on behalf of WRA and 7 Intermountain states, but also a coalition of regional markets expansion in clean energy space that we work together, and we have submitted our comments in the past. I want to first commend the GRC membership that includes a diversity of perspective and experience, and your diligent efforts in the last 18 months or so to bring together a proposal that is transparent, it's inclusive, and recognizing the realities of existing CAISO system versus the larger West that we need and deserve. I do want to take a couple of moments to comment on, it won't take long, but I just want to highlight a couple of things that I think are very valuable improvements, and I hope gets approved. But I also have a comment to make on as a RIF member representing the PIO community. So first and foremost, I don't want to spend much time on some of the changes, but strongly support the advisory authority scope and the fact that you would have an avenue for the governing body to prepare and provide an independent review or comment of their opposition if they have a disagreement with any proposal that goes to FERC. This represents transparency. I also want to commend the GRC proposal for identifying that the scope has changed with the EDAM being included, and therefore the nominating committee and the related work will have increased responsibilities. WRA strongly recommends the proposal for compensation to be revisited in 2023, given the expanded scope of the governing body that would ensue. WRA also strongly recommends and supports the valuable opportunity being given to the Regional Issues Forum to have an annual stakeholder roadmap process that includes a visit in the roundtable format with the RIF. The governing body members have been explicitly keen to have a closer connection with the RIF, and the RIF liaisons, I think, would appreciate and welcome that opportunity. At this point, I step out of the WRA role on behalf of the public interest organization community of the RIF As being the subsector liaison, I also want to strongly endorse the inclusion of a new risk sector liaison for the EDAM entities. In closing, I, on behalf of WRA, especially commend and thank the GRC for this proposal and the related recommendations for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Satyal. We appreciate your comments and both perspectives that you're representing. Can we go to the next caller, please?
Good afternoon. This is Meg McNull with Thompson Coburn for the Six Cities. Can you hear me okay?
We can. Go ahead.
Terrific. Briefly, on behalf of the Six Cities, we wanted to provide support for the GRC's revised draft final proposal on the joint authority topic in particular. Consistent with our comments really throughout this initiative, we support retaining the joint authority approach under EDAM, and we think it strikes the right balance for the reasons that Commissioner Tawney highlighted earlier during her discussion of the proposal. Specifically with respect to the scope of joint authority, we do agree with the GRC's decision to retain the apply to test, and we don't oppose the added language expanding joint authority over proposals to establish or change LMP formation for products that are common to the EIM or EDAM markets. We did want to acknowledge that the GRC provided some significant additional explanation of this LMP related language in the revised draft final proposal, and we thought that was very helpful in understanding how the GRC intends for this language and joint authority more broadly to be applied to specific topics such as scheduling priorities. That's all I have on behalf of the Six Cities. Thank you very much to the committee for your efforts and for getting this proposal across the finish line.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments and hanging with us today. We can go to the next caller.
Good morning. This is Jim Shetler. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Morning. My name is Jim Shetler, and I serve as the General Manager for the Balancing Authority of Northern California, better known as BANC. BANC is a registered balancing authority area under the NERC reliability standards and is an EIM entity under the ISO tariff. We've also been very active in participating in the extended day-ahead market discussions. My membership includes the Modesto Irrigation District, cities of Redding, Roseville, Shasta Lake, the Sacramento Municipal Utility District, and the Trinity Public Utility District. Also have a contractual arrangement with WAPA Sierra Nevada region and the Transmission Agency of Northern California. First of all, I want to extend our appreciation to the Governance Review Committee for the coming to a final recommendation on what's a very complex issue and coming up with a proposal for governance for the day-ahead market. And I also want to thank you for the opportunity to talk today. BANC is supportive of the GRC's proposal and the application of the joint authority to EDAM. We also believe this strikes the right balance as we move forward. BANC also supports the applied to articulation of the scope of the joint authority. As noted earlier, we all need to remember that EDAM is not an RTO. There are design features that are part of an RTO that are not included here and do not allocate cost associated with that. We do view that EDAM is a next step in the direction to a broader market, and the joint authority reflects the fundamental compromises necessary to make that step. As noted also earlier, this will not be the last word on either market design or governance elements. We expect EDAM and the design and governance for that will evolve as the market evolves, and we look forward to continued dialogue and participation in that. With that, we're supportive of the GRC proposal, and thank you for the opportunity.
Next caller, please go
Hello,
ahead.
this is Steve Pruitt at LA. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank
Thank you. My name's Steve Pruitt. I'm the manager of emerging markets here at the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. LADWP has been engaged for quite some time in the development of EDAM and looks forward to continuing development and the ultimate success of this regional market. Back in November, we filed comments jointly with Bank, and suffice it to say that LA fully agrees with the comments that Mr. Shetler just stated. And EDAM has unique challenges to it, and it is a day-ahead market in a non-voluntary, in a non-RTO voluntary construct, which is very important to cultivating participation. We also support the joint authority model for EDAM governance, and we like the fact that the GRC is engaging the Regional Issues Forum directly to develop these initiative priorities. So, and thank you for the time to comment here. Appreciate it.
That was our last caller. As a reminder, if you would like to make a public comment, press the raise hand icon at the bottom of your screen, or for the phone only lines, press #2 to enter the question queue. There are no raised hands at this.
Hi, it's Rebecca. I cannot get back into the Zoom meeting, so I've dialed in. I'm gathering, because I can't see what's going on, just want to confirm that we have made it through public comment.
Yes, we have.
Okay. And apologies that I didn't get to hear all of public comment. I again really appreciate the stakeholders commenting and sticking through this entire process with us. And I really honestly believe that this has been the perfect example of what a robust stakeholder process looks like between the members of the GRC as well as the folks throughout the region and within Californians that have been commenting and supporting this process. I think now we can move to, I'd like to hear from GRC members and their reflections on this. And please someone jump in if I'm like going off script or I feel like I'm flying blind here. But I'd like to open it up, and since I can't see to call on anyone, I'll defer to someone else to jump in and drive the bus until I can get back into the meeting.
Well, this is Bert Gross. I mean, I suppose I can jump in the interim unless one of the committee members wants to sort of do the taking of member comments. Either way is fine with me.
Tony, we couldn't hear you if you were speaking. Yeah, okay.
And we have a hand up from Tony.
Yeah, let's just take hands. Go ahead, Tony.
Thank you, everybody. Can you hear me? I'm not quite sure what the muting protocols were. So I appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity to kick off some individual GRC member comment here. It's been a long journey, obviously. Has been noted by Rebecca and others. It's been 3-ish years that we've been at this. A lot of change to the committee. It would not be appropriate to make any comments on this without first talking about Therese and her role in holding us all together. I mean, I think as many across the West know, Therese really had a unique role in our industry. She was the glue of this committee, but she was also the glue of public power in the Northwest and the West generally, and also across industry sectors. So we could not pull this off. And a lot of the progress that I think we've made as a community in the West on various issues would not have been possible without her contributions. So we greatly miss her, but we look forward to carrying on in her legacy. I think this process has been worthwhile despite its length. We appreciate all the input that we've received. Sometimes it's been difficult to process. Sometimes it's resulted in difficult conversations internally. But we've actively revisited a host of elements in our proposal over time and even up through the last iterations. And I think it certainly has been worthwhile. At bottom, joint authority is a good match for the EDAM design. It fosters collaboration. It reflects that this is sort of a halfway house of market design, as been noted earlier by speakers. But it really gives fundamental authorities to the governing body and the board on matters that are common across the market footprint. So I think the balance that we've achieved on scope is critical, and I certainly support the recommendation. I would like to close with a little bit of an exhortation to the stakeholder community and the RIF in particular. Thank you, Vijay. Thank you, Meg, for making comments today. I think the work product here is a demonstration that we can come up with consensus products when we put our mind to it. And I think the fact that the RIF filed comments on this earlier is also indication that it can be done. I don't think we need to be stuck in a stakeholder and dynamic where we're just speaking at each other. We can work collaboratively and reach consensus work products. And so I urge everybody to double down on those efforts moving forward. Again, I plan to support this today and really appreciate everyone's work, both on the call today and in the stakeholder community broadly. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Amanda?
Thanks, Tony.
Oh, Rebecca, are you back?
I'm in listen only, so I'll stop interjecting until I can try to get back on. So keep going ahead.
Hi, everyone. Amanda Ormond. I'm representing the public interest sector, and I joined the GRC as one of the last members. So I joined about 9 months ago, and I was told at the start that it would be a very detail-oriented process. And at this end part, I can tell you that I've been very impressed with both the level of comments that had been submitted and then how seriously all those comments have been considered by the GRC. So I think that's the thing I think I'm most proud of being part of this is how serious all the comments were taken. I do think that I joined thinking about how is this going to be built to make sure that the rest of the West has an opportunity to give its input and shape the market pieces to make sure it's beneficial. And I feel confident that this step in EDAM will help states do that, like Arizona, where I'm based. So it's been a real pleasure to be part of this group, and I also plan to support. So thanks very much.
Eric, you got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Letha. I'm going to vote to approve our proposal. There are a lot of compromises made, including, I think, a few by me. I want to note I've been on the committee since day one. Until 6 months ago when Jeff joined, I was the only California IOU rep representing that sector. I had a lot of battles at times with many of my fellow committee members. I want to thank them for their patience in listening to my arguments and for their collaboration and their willingness and ability to compromise. And it's been an experience I will treasure forever. And I want to thank each and every one of you, and also want to recognize all the stakeholders who gave really thoughtful comments throughout this process. And then also want to just thank Therese, and I'll remember her forever. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. I apologize. Apparently Zoom decided I needed an update right in the middle of all of that. Let's move on to Michelle.
Thank you. So I think I'm one of the most recent additions and to the GRC, and I appreciated very much working with all of you, and hope that I came up to speed on a reasonable timeline, jumping in kind of in the middle. I'm a consumer advocate, and I've been reaching out to a lot of the consumer reps, and the majority, if not the unanimous, but at least the vast majority are also supportive. I'm supportive of this proposal and will be voting in favor of it. I do want to make one final comment though, and in the sort of preamble to the whole thing, Rebecca and the written document talk about how as we advance into potential additional services, that one of the things that needs to be looked at again would be the role of states. And so I'm just gonna offer a friendly amendment, augment that a little bit and say that, you know, the state authorized consumer advocate role is another thing that would need to be further looked at. And we have a lot of advice from our colleagues who are much farther down this road in other regions, and would like to benefit from things that didn't necessarily go well in other regions. But that's a matter for the future. And like I said, there's really widespread support, and I appreciate having worked with all of you and the work that was done before I arrived. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Anybody else want to comment before we move to our grand finale? Suzanne.
Yeah, yes, thank you for the opportunity to comment. I know that we've only got a handful of minutes left here, but I do, as has been said, I do want to just acknowledge Therese Hampton's leadership of this effort from the outset. By the way, I'm Suzanne Cooper. I'm with the Bonneville Power Administration, and had participated on the GRC from that perspective and a public power perspective. You know, when we began this third phase of this governance design work, it was only months after initiating, you know, the what I'll call the experiment with joint authority for EIM, and other things, recommendations that had come in the first phases of the GRC's work. And ultimately, this kind of meant we had to improve on something, even as we're just, you know, learning what it might do. And I really appreciate how the GRC members and stakeholders brought many different perspectives and interests to the effort. I find that the collaboration that has occurred really encouraging, and the fact that we could build on shared interests was really great. And you know, where Eric made compromises, that was very really appreciated, and where he didn't make compromises, that meant maybe somebody else did. So that was kind of the give and take of the GRC, and it's been very collegial, but everyone's been extremely, you know, respectful and great listeners to understanding the desire to understand where the various members of the GRC are coming from, as well as delve into the stakeholder perspectives. One of the things I will say that kind of struck me throughout this multi-year process is that a lot of it comes down to trust with and within the governance structure that really needs to continue to be built. And I believe that the recommendations from the GRC with regard to joint authority, the stakeholder engagement, et cetera, really create that structure and opportunity for this trust building to occur if we as participants are open to it. And I encourage us all to have open minds and hearts to to trusting the feedback and input of others, and to build on improvements to these markets that are just so important to the West. So with that, I will end. Thank you. And thank you, Rebecca, for your leadership, getting us through to this point.
It was a collective effort, and I appreciate that, but we all stepped up. Letha.
Thanks so much. It was a real privilege to get to take on this role after Commissioner Raper stepped down, and I've learned an enormous amount. I've appreciated how substantive and detailed the comments and dialogue have been. You know, in my day job as a regulator, we spend an enormous amount of time engaging stakeholder comments, and I appreciated seeing that same discipline coming forward in this process. And the effort that stakeholders put into comments was really, I think, respected in the way I saw each and every one of you engage with the different perspectives that were brought forward in them. So I want to thank you for that. You know, as a regulator, I think what we've established here is well-defined processes that will enable effective decision making. We don't know specifically which challenges, what conflicts, what stresses the market will face in the coming years. And I think we've done the best we can do to create a model that can absorb those resiliently and have us all work together towards outcomes that are good for the public, that protect consumers, that build that trust over time. And I really appreciate that. I think every one of the steps we have put into process enable unpacking, if there is conflict in the market among stakeholders, unpacking why that is, what's underlying that, and looking for solutions, giving opportunity to create solutions that align interests and protect consumers. And I really appreciate that, that thoughtfulness and the creativity that I've seen come forward in the proposal development. And so with all of that, I'm really excited to support this proposal when we come to a vote, and seeing the market unfold under it. We already have one of the utilities I regulate expressing interest in the market, and as their regulator, I'm seeing, of course I can't prejudge, but I'm seeing signals that allow me to build that trust, that we'll be able to protect consumers and engage in this larger benefit that will support Oregon's decarbonization goals over the long term. So I look forward to continuing to work with all of you to make it a reality.
Thank you, Commissioner Tani, and thanks for all of your hard work on this, on top of your very fulfilling day job, or challenging day job. Pam.
I'll just also quickly echo some of the comments that have been shared here. And I think really particularly going back to some of Commissioner Tani's initial statements around that we do benefit when we work together, and that this proposal creates the framework for the region to move forward together, that unlike Texas, we have an opportunity to really partner across a much broader footprint, and that broader footprint creates the kind of resiliency to address the challenges that we've faced. Even in the last few months, we've seen a heat storm, rain across California, natural gas prices in places that I wouldn't have believed a year ago. And that this kind of market proposal and collaboration helps us weather those more resiliently. And so I think that this trust that Suzanne noted, the ability to build a decision-making together and to address the market design as it evolves to be the kind of market and platform that helps us have the kind of resiliency that we're going to need to face these increasingly dynamic challenges that the grid has, and to really resiliently weather the challenges that we're all facing, that this represents a good foundation to build that trust and to move forward with a more regional opportunity to keep us reliable and affordable and drive value for our customers.
Thanks, Pam. And again, appreciate your work and commitment and on the fly presentations when you're at your own Christmas party or holiday party. Any other comments before we start our voting process? Seeing none, I'm going to just acknowledge and let you all know that I talked to Rob Taylor on Friday and also received an email from him. And he let me know that he had been able to review the proposal, and if he was not conflicted with an SRP board meeting, he would be here in support of our proposal. And he also asked me to acknowledge and thank all of you for your hard work and that he enjoyed working with you all. So with that, I think I turn it back to Bert and we will get started on our official voting.
Thank you, Rebecca. Can you hear me? I just unmuted.
Yes.
I see. Okay. Yeah. So the process here would be I will read the motion that's being projected right now. We'll need a motion and a second from voting committee members, and then I'll take the vote in alphabetical order of the voting members. So with that, moved that the WEIM Governance Review Committee adopts the Western EIM Governance Review Phase 3 EDAM revised draft proposal dated December 22nd, 2022 as its final proposal for the consideration by the WEIM governing body and the ISO Board of Governors. So that is the motion. Do I have someone who will move it?
I'll move it.
Oh, Eric, go ahead.
Eric beat you out. We'll have Eric to move, and I'm sorry, is there a second?
Second, it's Rebecca.
Okay, so Eric is the movement, Rebecca is the second. All right, and now I'll just go through and ask for each member's vote. Michelle Beck.
Aye.
Tony Braun.
Aye.
Suzanne Cooper.
Aye.
Eric Eisenman.
Aye.
Jeff Nelson.
Aye.
Amanda Ormond.
Aye.
Pam Sporborg.
Aye.
Lisa Tawney.
Aye.
And we're going to skip Rob Taylor and moving on to Rebecca Wagner.
Aye.
And last, Cameron Yurkowski.
Aye.
Okay, so all the voting members present have approved and the motion carries. And this will become the final proposal of the GRC for consideration at the governing body and Board of Governors joint session coming up. Thank you very much. I'll turn it back to you, Rebecca, in case you have any final comments or anything else, but we have approved the motion.
Thank you, Bert. And just again, want to extend my thank you to all of the stakeholders and the GRC and the ISO. You have been tremendous support for us and helped us navigate areas that, when we were unsure of ourselves. The ISO was very, very supportive in research and helping us understand any of the potential outcomes of what we were considering. So I have a debt of gratitude to ISO staff and Holly for keeping me on track these last few months. We will be reaching out to GRC members to collaborate on who will be presenting and participating in the February 1st meeting. But look for an email on that so we can we can do our dog and pony show one more time. With that, I will go ahead and adjourn our GRC, hopefully for a while, and look forward to seeing you all in person and continuing to work with you as we collaborate across the West. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes our conference. Thank you for using event services. You may now disconnect.